Good afternoon. So today I'm going to be planting tulip bulbs in the yard. There are many different ways that you can plant. So I'm going to go ahead and start digging in the yard and show you. Now you can plant these in your yard directly. You can also plant these in containers that you put outside. I have several different colors and varieties that I will be planting. Now I got these at our local farm here in Washington. And again, we grow tulips for cut flower production. We also have some fields that are open for viewing and picking during the April season. There are two ways that you can there's many different ways you can plant bulbs, but two simple ways that you can plant tulip bulbs. One of them is to dig like a big hole or trench and place them all in the bulbs in there and then cover it with soil. Or you can use one of these hand tools and basically plant them all individually. Now, I will show you both, but basically the way I always do it is with clusters in one big hole because it's easier. You definitely want to have 5 to 7 inches of soil on top of the bulb. The reason for that is because they do need to stay in kind of a blanket or a bed of warmth, even though they do like the cold. But if they get too cold, like if they get exposed to frost, they could die or they could not produce a bulb. I already loosened all the soil, but it's really important before, like soil prep is really important. So what I do is I go through, and I already showed, that I dig up the dirt just to create air in the soil. Tulips really like airy soil. My dad always says don't mud them in, which basically means if you have really wet soil or soil that won't breathe, the tulips will suffocate. So again, they need airy soil, and so what I do is I dig up the dirt and really work it a little bit so it gets all the nitrogen and the oxygen in the soil, and then once I prepared it, then I can actually start placing the bulbs in there. Another good thing to know about a tulip bulb is usually the root system will come out of the bottom here. So when you plant the tulip bulbs, you actually want to put the root system down, face down, with the pointy end up. This is where the stem comes out of, and again, the roots want to grow down. Now, if you happen to place it in the wrong direction, it will actually correct itself, but it's best to just plant them face down. That way they will grow in the right direction. Tulips. Tulips bloom in the spring and they're absolutely beautiful, and they actually come from a bulb. They originally came from Turkey. The reason why they were called a tulip is because the word tulip actually meant turban. They were found in the mountains of Turkey, and they kind of grew in the wild. That's how they started. And they were so beautiful that they actually uprooted them and brought them to Europe. Now, the Netherlands was one of the most successful cultivators of the tulip, and they actually at one point in the 1600s began the first stock market based off of tulip bulbs. At one point, a tulip bulb was so popular that it was worth the price of a home. And a tulip bulb is, and this is, they come in different sizes. Tulips are, the biggest size is 12 plus. Best results when you plant them are anything up above 10 centimeters. Now this tulip bulb is actually 10, 11. The ones that you usually want to plant in your yard is anywhere between 10, 11 to 12 plus. The bigger the better. So you'll get a bigger bloom, they will last longer, the bigger the size of the tulip. Now there's many different colors, sizes, and styles of tulips. Tulips are, they have different seasons of blooming. If you plant something that's early, they will bloom between the end of March to the middle of April. The mid-season blooming variety, it will usually bloom between the beginning of April towards about the middle of April. Late season variety, they will bloom anywhere between mid-April to sometimes even late April or beginning of May. Usually by Mother's Day, blooms are usually bloom out. Usually the month of October is a really great time of year to plant. Tulip bulbs have to have what they call Mother Winter in order to jumpstart their growth period. Mother Winter is a cold, dark period where they start to root and the roots grow down into the soil, which pushes the bulb up. Now, what's cool about a tulip bulb is that the inside of the tulip bulb already has every leaf, petal, and stem already inside the bulb. It already knows what it's going to be. So the outer layers are like an onion, and they are like the food or the nutrition for the bulb that they need for the lifetime of the bulb, from the beginning of rooting all the way to the bloom time in springtime. By the time spring comes and by the time the bulb is bloomed, there will be a new bulb that develops inside, and then we dig those up. Now tulips I call the diva of the bulb varieties, because tulips actually do need to be replanted every year. Now you can keep them in the soil for, a couple years, and they probably will grow again year after year, but eventually what happens is a tulip bulb, during the time that it's in the ground and when it's blooming, it will develop small little bulbs on the sides of the bulb. And what happens is if those don't get separated, the smaller bulbs will start taking nutrition from the larger bulb, and the larger bulb will get smaller and smaller while the smaller bulb gets bigger. And before you know it, you've got two small bulbs that aren't producing a flower. Planting tulips in containers. It's basically the same concept as planting them in your garden, but you're going to use usually potting soil, and you just want to make sure to have the same amount of depth on top of the bulb as you do in a garden, so 5 to 7 inches of soil on top. The important thing about container gardening with tulips is that you keep them outside in the weather even, or you can keep them in a garage, but they have to have that cold Mother Winter, usually at least 45 degrees or below, to jumpstart the process. I'm going to plant these containers today. What I do is I'll put potting soil in there. Now, like at the farm, we use potting soil when we grow our greenhouse tulips, and I'll show another video on that process. But what we do is we actually put actual sand on top of the tulip bulbs, so we don't have to use as much on top of the bulb. The reason why we use sand is because it's heavy and airy, and it also, because the bulbs again push up, because the roots grow down and the bulbs push up. So in order to kind of keep them from growing every which way direction, I like to plant stuff as in clusters, so I'm just gonna do one color per pot. There's many different ways that you can plant tulip bulbs. You can plant them with other spring blooming flowers such as daffodils, crocus, hyacinth. I've done that before, where you do kind of a mixture of all of them and then they bloom at different times. You can plant different bloom time type tulips so that you get basically like a full at least month of growth in your pot, which is kind of cool. So you can use an early, mid, and late varieties, 3 different varieties. That's also fun. I also wanted to mention like additives to soil. Now, potting soil pretty much has all the additives you need. Some people even in gardening in their own yard, you can add anything that has nitrogen in it, or bone meal. Bone meal is really good for tulip bulbs. So again, I picked one color per container. I've picked a really pretty variety called Luba, which is a two-tone red with a yellow edge. Strong Gold, which is a yellow, just straight yellow. Negrita, which is a purple, beautiful purple. And then High Five, which is a new one that we have this year, and I believe it's like a super dark pink or purpley color as well. Between planting, you can go anywhere up to like a bulb size between the bulbs, and they will look amazing. I try and spread them out a little bit, but I like them close and tight together because I think they'll look amazing together. Now, as far as planting these, see how the top of this is pointing in one direction. What I do is I try and kind of nestle them up against it, and then they will actually kind of grow outside of, they'll actually kind of line the container. And so what I do is I place them a little bit along the container line, and then the center ones I will just kind of plant or nestle in between those. Now, some of the times you'll see a bulb that has a little bit of damage on the outside of the bulb. This does not mean that the flower will not produce. The flower is on the very inside of this bulb, and so the outer layers are actually nutrition and protect the inner bulb while it's growing. So if you see a little damage on the outside of a tulip bulb, it will still grow and produce a beautiful flower. So now I will go ahead and just fill in the rest of this container, but again, don't push the dirt down, just keep it really airy and light. I didn't have quite enough potting soil for the containers I planted. I decided to get a little bit of sand to put on top of them just to keep them, you know, have a heavy layer on top of there so they can't push up out of the dirt. Well, that completes me planting tulips in containers. Again, I'm going to let these, I'm just going to set them outside. I'm going to water them in a little bit just because I like to have some water in there, but you don't want to overwater them. And because they're going to be outside, I'm just going to let the weather just kind of do what it needs to do. I do want to make sure that the pots do have good drainage, so I will put something underneath so that they don't get suffocated. Again, that's so important that they have good drainage. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. Please like and share. Have an amazing day.